Good morning. Thank you all for showing up bright and early here. Glad to see you all here in audience. I'm Revathy. Can you all hear? All good? Okay. I'm Revethy. I'm here to talk to you about migrating MongoDB deployments the right way. We'll do a quick agenda first, and then we'll jump into each of these sessions. The first thing we're going to talk about is MongoDB Atlas. We're going to talk about Atlas and some of the common migration challenges in getting to Atlas. We'll then switch and talk a little bit about each of the tools that will help you with migrations. Once we finish the tools, we'll switch over. We'll talk about people and processes that make these migrations successful. We understand that tools are only one part of the solution. You need the right folks in there. You need the right processes in there to make these migrations successful. That's why today's session includes both of these. And then we'll move on and give you a few resources. So you can play with these tools yourselves. These are free. You can download and start using them. So we'll leave you with resources at the end. Before we talk about migrations, I want to take a step back. I want to talk a little bit about the role of the database operator in this new world of developing modern and sophisticated Gen AI-based applications. First, you're always managing a growing data estate. That data estate comes from many different vendors and many different technologies, which means you're learning each of these technologies, you're figuring out the tools that they come up with, working with each of these vendors and their contracts, and figuring out how all of this fits together. Second, you're optimizing performance and scalability. But when you do, you're constantly thinking about security, right? So there's a bunch of things that you're constantly playing with. Third, your application developers and your software engineers who are working with you and your infrastructure are constantly moving faster. They're moving faster than they ever did before. They want to develop faster, they want to deploy faster, they want more services soon and fast enough. And while all of this is happening in this modern new application development that they're working with, you still have a whole lot of legacy applications that you still need to support. Those aren't going away. And those legacy applications need to be modernized, they need to be migrated, and you're figuring out how to do all of this in tandem. Which then leads us to, what is this trap that we are running into when you self-manage your database yourself? The first thing that you want to do, and the only thing that you want to concentrate on, is supporting your developers and supporting your customers. That means help build the apps faster, in performance, with the right performance and the scale, and making sure that they're secure. Instead, what you end up doing is a whole bunch of other things. You're provisioning servers, you're configuring them for HA, you're figuring out what monitoring looks like, you're figuring out which security patches you should apply in what order, you're figuring out how upgrades need to work, you need to figure out how it needs to work. There's just an endless list of things that you end up doing instead. Which is why I want to introduce you first to Atlas. Atlas is MongoDB's developer data platform. It is for developers to work with data services and database operators to provide those data services through a common unified developer interface. Which then leads to the next question. That's the new world, the Atlas world. That looks nice. We've got all the data services in one nice data plane. However, what I'm working with right now, you're probably wondering, are these self-managed databases? And you're wondering, how do I get from here to there? And it's almost like moving houses. Like all of us have done this a few times ourselves. It's not easy, it's not simple, it's risky. You got to figure out what to move. You got to figure out whether your new destination looks fine. You got to figure out who are your movers. You got to figure out how are they packaging it. You got to figure out if they're going to drop something, lose something. You don't want that happening. And when you move into your new house, you want to make sure your family is up and running as fast as you can. Same problems with data migration. Even more complex, because now you're working with tools and you're figuring out the same set of problems. So then we asked our customers, what are the migration challenges that you typically run into and how can we help you? The first thing that they came up with is they don't understand how they can perform migration. So you start from your source, right? And you're thinking, I got the source, but what versions do I have? What are these tools that I need to pick up? Do those tools work with the server versions that I already have? And then they start thinking about the app that sits on top. Should I do something with the app? Should the app upgrade? Should the app now be able to scale? Should I change some topologies with the app? And then I start worrying about the destination. How is my Atlas environment? Is that set up right? Do I have the right cluster size? Do I have the right standards? Can I ensure success there? And then I start thinking more. Okay, now I've got my source, I've got my destination set up. Let's get to the actual move part. How do I validate that my migration is indeed successful? What if I lose data in between? How should my application validate if I've lost that data? Then you start thinking about when this application does indeed migrate, then what should I be preparing on the website? Should I be thinking if there's a downtime? How much of a downtime? How are my users going to be impacted? Should I schedule it? How should I schedule it? Which then leads you to, oh my God, that's a whole lot of things that I need to worry about. It is no different than moving houses. Then leads you to like, do I even have the right skills to do this? Like, are my people skilled enough to do this? Do we have the right tools? Do we have the right processes? How do I embark on something this complex and risky for my entire application? Which is why we are here to talk about this today. And we want to talk about this holistically. We don't want to tell you just the tools that help you migrate. We'll also talk to you about the runbooks. We'll talk to you about how to de-risk your migrations. We'll talk to you about the people that we bring along. MongoDB wants to support you end to end. We want to make sure we give you the tools, the people, and the processes to make your migration successful. That's what we're here for today. So I want to start off with the tools. But before I tools, I want to differentiate migrations a little bit, because you're going to hear about different kinds of migrations through the course of today. What you see on the left are migrations that happen from MongoDB to MongoDB, right? So your source is MongoDB, your destination is MongoDB. You're trying to migrate them either from community or your self-managed databases. You're trying to move them within on-prem or to Atlas. There's a set of tools that help you do that. That's the left-hand side. What you see on the right is migrating from relational databases to MongoDB. This is slightly different. This is your Oracle, MySQL, SQL Server, Sybase, 20-year-old technologies. We talked a little bit about the modernization, right? We talked a little bit about how you're stuck with modernizing your legacy apps. We've got a tool just for that. It's called the Relational Migrator. You'll hear about that both at the Central Park stage shortly from Sahir as a part of the keynote. You'll also hear about that in a separate session. We'll show you what that session is this afternoon. Please join us for that as well. Today though, right now, I'm going to talk to you about the left-hand side, about how to deploy and how to migrate MongoDB deployments and how to migrate from one MongoDB cluster to another. There are 3 tools that I'll talk about today. As they're listed in here, the easiest point-and-click tool, Live Migrate, number 1. MongoDB, the binary that powers Live Migrate, that is feature-rich, that is performant, that gives you all of the options so you can use it yourself and orchestrate it yourself the way you like. And then the Mongo dump and restore tools that has been there for over years now. These are the tools that are helpful for offline migration, so we'll give you a little bit of introduction on those as well. And then we'll talk a little bit about the people in the process. So if there's something I want you to take away, it's this. These are the 3 tools that you want to remember. And then my colleague Abhi will talk about people in process. And I want that as a takeaway too. Awesome. So let's first start about the first tool here, which is Live Migrate. Live Migrate is the simplest UI, right? It's Atlas-based, it's a cloud UI, it's self-managed. It is exactly as it sounds. You can migrate live, you can do this in seconds. The process itself is very simple. You will set up a destination cluster on Atlas, spin up the cluster that you like, go into that destination cluster, and you say, I want to move my data here. The tool resides in the Atlas UI, and you can use it in 2 ways. You can say, I want to pull data to this cluster, to this destination, and here's the source I want to pull from. And your source can be anywhere. It can be on-prem, it can be on a third-party database, it can be on Atlas, it can be anywhere. You can say, this is where I want to pull from. Or you can say, if I have a cloud manager-based environment on-prem, I can say I can use that, or self-managed, I can use that to push data into Atlas using the same Live Migrate UI. The UI is point and click, few different options, set up the destination cluster, click it, start migration, and in seconds you can cut over. I'm not trivializing it. All of MongoSync takes seconds, and Live Migrate makes it super simple to use. This is best used for medium-sized workloads, like-for-like migration, same topologies on either side, very easy to use. Anybody can use that. And this is something that you want to play with as you start using. As you're experimenting with migration and for smaller workloads, this is a perfect tool to use. The tool that actually powers Live Migrate is a binary called MongoSync. I belong to the team. I run products for the team. We have an engineering team that is dedicated to building this tool and supporting this tool. We want to make sure that MongoSync is front and center, just like the server is. MongoSync has a few key capabilities. Let's cover that now, and then I'll talk a little bit about how it works, and then we'll move on to the other tools. The first capability I want to talk about is continuous sync. So we've talked a little bit about one-time migrations, moves, right? So I'm moving from source to destination. One-time migration, MongoSync does it well. In addition to that, it also does continuous sync. So if you wanted to keep two environments in sync 24/7, you can use MongoSync for that as well. We guarantee eventual consistency as a part of continuous sync. Second, resumability. It's not just start and stop, you can pause and resume. What that means is that you can script your application along with MongoSync. So you can choose when to pause and do any app operations you want as a part of this script. Third, we don't actually care where you want to migrate from or where you want to migrate to, as long as you're running MongoDB. So you can go from self-managed to self-managed, self-managed to Atlas, Atlas to Atlas. It doesn't really matter to us. This is a binary. You choose to deploy it, you run it, and you can migrate from any environment to any other environment. Fourth, it gives you sharded cluster support by default. There's nothing you need to do. It runs like magic. Fifth, it works for highly resilient workloads as well. So you could have replica sets on your source and destination. You could have elections happening. MongoSync will still continue to migrate for you. Last, and this is important, many folks talk to us about the concept of reverse, which is, I need a fallback if something goes wrong. And so MongoSync allows you to do that too. When you start your migration, you can say, I want the reverse option available, which means that in addition to migrating from source to destination, if at any point you felt like you wanted to go back, it can reverse sync from destination to sources. So now let's talk a little bit about how this tool works, right? Because if you really think about it, it's a fairly straightforward problem. I've got data in source. I've got a destination cluster. I need a tool that migrates from source to destination, right? Except that the challenge that you have is how do you replicate this data that is being constantly changed on the source? So we take a two-phased approach to do that. The first thing that we do is we just copy over. We don't want to miss anything. We copy over all of the source data to the destination data. Pretty straightforward copy phase. We're okay with the data changing when we do this. Why do we do this? Just so that we cover all of the documents. Like I said, we don't want to miss any documents. We don't want to miss any deletes. We want to make sure we are copying over all of those. Then we move on to the second phase. And we have something called as the op log, which records a list of all the changes that are happening to your data in the source database. We use that op log and change streams to figure out the changes that happened since we copied over. And then we play on destination. Why do we do this? We do this just so that the destination data does not become stale. Let's take a very simple example and walk through this. We'll take an example where my source cluster has one database, one collection, 3 documents. Straightforward, simple enough. My destination is empty, an empty cluster. In the first phase, you start MongoSync and it starts copying over. So it's copying over, it copies over X, it's trying to copy over Y. At that same time, X and Z changed on the source. But remember, we talked about copy as the first phase, right? So it continues copying over. It continues copying over X, Y, and Z, just like it saw when it started the copy. And it finishes the copy in the first phase. And of course, there is inconsistent data because the change was happening on the source when you did the copy. So what it does is it moves on to the next phase. And in the next phase, it applies the changes that it saw. It means the change that you saw in X and the change that you saw in Z gets copied over. X gets copied over, now your data is consistent. Z still gets copied over, and the change itself is idempotent, so it doesn't really matter. When everything is consistent, at this point, you get to commit. So when you and you can choose when you want to commit. MongoSync tells you when to commit and when it's ready. This is the only time you would need a little bit of a downtime, and it's in seconds. We'll talk a little bit about that. And at this point, your application can cut over from source to destination. So start MongoSync, let it go through the 2 phases. It'll tell you when to commit, cut over, you're done. It's as simple as that. And in between this, like I talked about, there are all those options available for pausing, for restarting, for doing things in reverse, and all of those work as well. So that was Live Migrate, which was a simple tool, the UI-based tool that we talked about, right? And then we talked about the tool that powers it, which is MongoSync. Can I take questions in the end? Is that okay? Thank you. So then we talked a little bit about MongoSync, which is the tool that helps you copy, the tool that powers it, the binary, right? Then there's a separate set of tools called dump and restore. This is a different binary than what you saw before. The dump and restore works for offline migrations. It's exactly like what it sounds. You dump the data, you pick it up, and you restore the data. So perfect for snapshot migrations. I want to take a snapshot and I want to move it over. I have a small database, I want to move it over. I have small workloads, I want to move it over. I have an offline migration that I want to do. For things like that, you would use this utility. This utility has been there forever, so this is something that we continue to support. All of these utilities are free to use. Dump and restore is what is commonly used with our community editions. MongoSync and Live Migrate, the cloud UI on top of it, is what is used for all of our paid editions. I talked about, we've got engineering teams supporting both of this. We are very excited about how these products are evolving. MongoSync is our best-in-class, most performant, feature-rich tool. MongoSync is the only tool in the market that guarantees durability and correctness. We've got verifiers built in to make sure that we take all of your data and we don't miss anything. And we're super incredibly excited about these tools, and we would love for you to use them. That said, we recognize that this is only one part of a successful plan. Because eventually, in order to make a migration plan successful, there's more you need. You have to make sure that your applications are ready. You have to make sure you test it out. You have to test it out in different environments. You want to make sure it performs, which is why we've got a set of people called representing the migration factory, and I'm going to introduce Abhi here in a second. And we also have a set of processes that our teams have developed over the years that they bring to you, work with you, personalize it for you to work for the use cases and the data load that test it in, and help you develop. So with this, I'd like to welcome Abhi to stage. Welcome, Abhi.
Thank you, Revethy.
Thank you.
Thank you, Revethy. Good morning, everybody. Thank you again for joining us this early. I realize 8:30 in the morning. We wanted to call it Mimosas and Migration, but our organizers wouldn't let us have any mimosas, so it's coffee with migration. Revethy talked a bit about the tooling. I want to talk a bit about what we are doing on the processes and people side to complement the work that our engineering team is doing. I lead an organization named the Migration Factory at MongoDB. We are a cross-functional center of excellence focused on migrations because migrations are a strategic priority for us. And we have members from professional services, members from technical support, and members from product and engineering team. We have completed some of the most largest, we have been in business for close to 2 years now, and we have completed some of the largest and most complex migrations. We have also completed a whole bunch of standard typical migrations. Through that, we have got into a stage where we can execute migrations like a factory, hence Migration Factory, and we have built a robust 5-step migration process that consolidates our experiences. I'm going to talk about that today. So what makes a good migration process? What makes a good process? First of all, using a process should accelerate the migration, not slow it down. Using a process should give you predictability on migrations. Before you start the migration, you should have a really good idea on how long the migration will take. And how do you get that? You get that by building something that's based on best practices, experience from previous migration, uses best-in-class tooling, the tooling that Revethy just talked about, and using prescriptive migration plans, again, based on years of experience, dozens of migrations. This kind of acceleration cannot come at the trade-off of taking shortcuts. So your business data, you're migrating your critical business data. So proactive de-risking has to be at the front and center of any process. And correctness. data in flight is no less critical than data at rest. So any migration process that you use has to also ensure correctness, and validation has to be a fundamental part of the migration process. Think of migration process like a checklist. Using a checklist allows you to make sure that the critical activities happen in the right order. Critical activities happen as a checklist, they happen in the right order, and it also you are maintaining communication with the right people throughout. So that's the value of using a process. There are 5 steps to the process that we have found out for MongoDB migrations. First is design. You start with designing a solution that makes use of the best-in-class data platform that is Atlas. You start with that. This solution, of course, should meet your business needs. Then you'll remember the table that remember the tooling that Revethy talked about. Using that criteria, use criteria like what's the source and destination topology look like, what your downtime tolerance is, what your data size is. Using criteria like this, select the right migration tooling, and once you have done that, design the migration solution. You need to make sure, of course, we have talked a few times about de-risking and proactive de-risking. To do that, the approach that we do is we do a comprehensive analysis of what your source looks like and what your target is going to look like. You should take a look at that. Either you have already identified the migration path. Think about what the problem areas might be and what the potential pitfalls are, and look to proactively mitigate them. Some things that can come through this mitigation process are defer creation of indexes after the data copy, or intentionally upsize the instance size on the destination for the duration of the migration. We call this process migration readiness assessment. Our technical support team has come with this, and this is a cornerstone of our migration process. You have come up with the migration solution, you have thought of all the things that can go wrong, and you have looked to mitigate those steps. You're ready for migration, right? Not quite. The next step is test. This is the most important step. Often we have seen people take some shortcuts with that. Don't do that. You have seen the memes. I normally don't test my code. When I do, I test it only in production. Don't be that person. Comprehensive testing is an extremely important step. Try to do it in as close a representative environment as you can, and through this, you're going to get a solid cutover plan. You'll bridge the difference between theory and practice, and you'll get your own numbers for how long the data transfer will take. Come up with a solid cutover plan through this testing. And now finally you have done design, you have de-risked, you have comprehensively tested it and come up with a cutover plan. Now we are ready for migrate. This migration at this point, the cutover at this point should almost feel anticlimactic. And that's the way it should be. Migration should not be an adventure, it should be anticlimactic. And we talked about validation earlier. 2 things here. Validation is important, and second thing is you should have a validation plan before you start the migration. And typically people use things like spot checks on source and destination, and use tools. We also have 2 tools, Mongo Verifier and DB Hash, both available for download, that you can use for validation. I won't spend too much time on this since we're running short of time, but just MongoSync is really, really fast. Hopefully the speeds, the representative speeds that you see here will convince you of that. Our engineering team has spent a lot of time and continues to invest in optimizing and speeding it up. So hopefully you will agree after seeing these numbers. Some tips and tricks. Again, you need these only when you're using MongoSync standalone. If you're using Live Migrate, you don't need most of these. And we are working on a blog post that captures the details of this. I see some people taking pictures, so I'm taking a pause here. All right. Next, okay. All right. And as we are closing out, I want to just do a quick recap. Revathy talked about the tooling with a focus on MongoSync, our most powerful and most complete solution. I talked about some of the processes and some of the best practices that you should use along with the tooling. A good migration process, of course, is people plus process plus tooling. And to help you get started, here are some resources available for you. You are welcome to set up an account on Atlas, take it for a test ride, see for yourself why MongoSync is by far the best in the class developer data platform. All the tools that Revethy talked about, they are available for download right now on our website. Please, we encourage you to take them for a spin, download them, and test them out firsthand. As you are doing that, there's plenty of guides and videos available on our website for you to use. We again encourage you to take advantage of those. And if at any point you need support from us, MongoDB, our professional services team is happy to work with you. We have a fixed size, fixed fee migration package that we believe is the right fit for most of the migrations. But if there's something more, if you have a footprint of MongoDB that you're looking to migrate, and if you're looking to help somebody to help you build a program, help you build your own center of excellence, our professional services can work with you on that. And Revathy talked about this earlier. At 2:55 p.m., right now we talked about Mongo to Mongo migrations. A complementary part is migrations from relational database to Atlas. The tool for that is Relational Migrator. There's a session at 2:55 p.m. led by David Soul. Again, should be a good session. Encourage you to join that. And it's going to be in Central Park Stage. Thank you again for your time. Thank you for joining us this bright and early in the morning. Fun day ahead, including the keynote. Hope you have a fun and productive day. Revathy and I will be around. I know we are running short for Q&A. Maybe we'll take a couple of questions, or do we have time? Or maybe just both of us will be here. Yeah, both of us will be here. Please feel free to grab us, and throughout the day, ask for us at Ask the Expert session if the need be. Thank you.